Hello everyone! Today we are doing one of the most requested reviews of the channel. This is the 8Bitdo Pro 2 in this new transparent purple color. It is compatible with the Nintendo Switch, Windows, Mac, and Android. I've seen a lot of comments telling how awesome this controller is, and I'm excited to finally check it out. And this special edition is being sold currently only on Aknes store. I'll leave the links in the description. As you can see, the packaging is pretty tight. I had a lot of trouble removing it from the box. But finally, here it is. It comes with protectors for the analog sticks, which is quite nice. And this color looks amazing. It is a different shade of purple from that famous Game Boy color. It's much more darker and less transparent, but you can still see through the plastic. In the box, you'll also get a USB Type-C cable for charging. And let's take a look at the manual. Going back to the controller, in the front you have a Super Nintendo style layout. The buttons, the D-pad, everything looks exactly like the Super Nintendo gamepad. But in this controller you'll also have analog sticks. In the back you have two back buttons, and this switch here saying SADX. Jokes apart, S stands for Switch, A for Apple, D for Android, and X for Xbox, or X input, and the triggers are analog triggers. And here's a side-by-side comparison with the original Super Nintendo controller. This controller has seen better days, but it is the only one that I have now, so it'll have to do. The shoulder buttons here feels like an exact replica of the Super Nintendo. The resistance, the texture, and even the letters are a perfect copy. On the Super Nintendo controller, the buttons are a bit more in the center, and the Y and X buttons are concave. On the 8Bitdo, the buttons are all convex. And here's the size comparison of the buttons. The D-pad also looks very similar to the original. There is a star or capture and a home button here. And wow, this controller is very comfortable. The ergonomics is very well done. For example, the back buttons are accessible, but you won't have accidental presses. You can firmly squeeze the grips and you won't activate the buttons, because they are positioned a little bit closer to the joints of your fingers. So in order to press it, you have to move your finger back a little bit. The rubber protectors nicely wraps around the analog sticks, not leaving any room for slipping around. And take notes here, Microsoft. This is how you give your customer options. The 8Bitdo Pro 2 already comes with a rechargeable battery. And it also has battery contacts for use with your AA batteries. So instead of giving you a pack of AA alkaline batteries, they give you a lithium rechargeable battery with a capacity of 100 mAh. And it works with alkaline batteries, but also AA rechargeable batteries too. If you're gonna leave an option to the consumer, it's good to leave the cheaper option in his hand. And looking at these battery contacts, I've seen these contacts somewhere. Speaking of the devil, huh? The Xbox battery compartment is awfully similar. And I got really curious to see if the battery would work. And to my surprise, it really does. But I wouldn't want to leave this battery in this controller. As you can see, it has 3 contacts for charging, and in the Xbox controller you have 4 contact pads. So it is okay if you're using it to play games, but I wouldn't want to plug this controller with this battery inside. It could end up frying your controller or damaging the batteries. As expected, it works well with the Nintendo Switch out of the box. And the D-pad is awesome for 2D games. I tested the D-pad and the diagonals are easily accessed. It supports gyro controls. Sadly, it won't wake up your Switch. You'll have to turn it on manually. Out of the box, the back buttons won't work. That's because the internal memory is empty. You won't have any profiles or configurations. So you must download the 8Bitdo Ultimate software on your computer or smartphone. Then all you have to do is plug in your controller and it will ask which mode you want to configure. You can have 3 different profiles for each mode. And you can remap any button you want. As well as set any function to the back buttons. On the analog sticks tab, I quickly tested the sticks to see if there were any dead zones in the axis. And whew, I'm relieved to see that this controller is good. The axes have no dead zones, which means that these controllers are good for shooters or any games that require precision. The center dead zones of the controller are good though, and here you can customize them to your liking. You can invert any of the axes, swap the sticks, or swap the D-pad and the left stick. The dead zones of the triggers are also customizable. You can reduce or increase the intensity of the rumble, and you can configure macros too. When you finished configuring, you have to press sync to the device to send the configurations for the controller. Here are the macros working. And since we are in the gamepad tester, let's do a circularity test. Again, another great point for this controller, only 0.7 average error. There are 3 functions I didn't show here: the turbo, the hold, and the swap. The turbo is already set to the start button, so I'll register the hold and swap to the back buttons. And to activate turbo, simply hold the button you want and press the start button. You can enable turbo for multiple buttons at once. And to disable it, you'll just need to repeat the combination. The hold function is just like turbo, but you don't need to keep holding the button down. This is good for shoot 'em ups. And the swap function lets you choose 2 buttons and swap them on the go, without the need to open the software to change them. As expected, when playing on Android through Bluetooth, you'll have a bit of input delay. This is normal as Bluetooth is a slower connection. But I found out that you can use the R100 from Big One. Basically, this is an universal 2.4 GHz connector. Having a 2.4 GHz dongle is good because you'll have the benefits of not having any input delay and enjoy a wireless connection. But it only works with original controllers. It won't accept third-party ones. But if you change the 8Bitdo controller to the switch mode, it can fool the adapter into thinking it is a Pro controller. And now you can enjoy a low latency wireless connection with your 8Bitdo controller. Here's the comparison side by side so you can see how it really improves the connection. And with this adapter, you can use the 8Bitdo Pro 2 on the PlayStation 4. Let's move on to the teardown. You'll need an hexagonal screwdriver to disassemble this controller. You'll have 2 screws in the bottom and 2 on the top hidden below the sticker. You'll also have to remove the cover of the L2 and R2 buttons. Unclip this section on the bottom and 2 on the top. When removing the back shell, be careful with the flat cable. In the back shell, you'll have access to the analog sticks and rumble motors. The analog sticks are of the Alps brand, the same brand of the main generation consoles. Now let's take a look in the front part. In the front shell, you have rubber membranes for the main buttons, and clicky switches for the star, profile selector and home buttons. You'll have rubber membranes for the shoulder buttons and triggers too. Here's the D-pad and its rubber membrane. I wonder how it looks internally compared to the original Super Nintendo controller. So I disassembled my controller and let's take a look. And you can see that the rubber membranes are identical. This is a testament of the quality of the Super Nintendo controller. Here you have a rubber membrane of a console that is 30 years old. So I expect a similar durability on the 8Bitdo membrane. And here's the one of the main buttons. They are a bit different on the top, but on the bottom they are exactly the same. I could even switch them out and it wouldn't make a difference. Speaking of switching things, the original buttons for the Super Nintendo are also identical. So you can take the concave buttons of the Super Nintendo and use it on the 8Bitdo. And it works on the other way around too. I'll say that these buttons looks even nicer on the original Super Nintendo controller. And here's a comparison on the D-pad. And I know I should have cleaned them before filming this, sorry for that. But I will feel bad to scrub away all of this historical dust from more than 20 years of Mario Kart and Bomberman matches with my friends. So I hope you don't mind. And that is the end of this review. I hope I was able to show you all of the details of this controller. I can say that the 8Bitdo Pro 2 sits among the best gamepads I've reviewed. So far, the only downside is not having a 2.4 GHz dongle. And it would be nice if the app could map the buttons to the touchscreen for Android games that don't support gamepads. Aside from that, everything in this controller is great. The D-pad is awesome. The analog sticks are very precise and have no dead zones. The ergonomics are amazing, and the build quality is great too. Having buttons identical to the Super Nintendo allows you to easily customize and replace them, and even the rubber membranes are easily replaceable. If you want to get this controller in this new color, you should check Aknes store. The links are in the description. If you like this content, consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a comment or a like. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.